director, here with Damon Cook, one of the producers. Unfortunately, we're missing
James Payne.
That's right, the other co-producer and audio engineer on the movie. This is a little 30-second trailer required by ITVS, who funded the project initially before Redline got a hold of it.
Thanks, ITVS.
Yeah.
Funding for this program was
And the
provided by
Corporation for Public Broadcasting, of
Broadcasting.
course. And the first shot of the movie is Catfish Jerry Ryder in the Little River near Tecumseh, Oklahoma. And what do you think was so special about this shot, Damon?
We were really in pre-production stage and shooting on video and scouting locations and characters, and this was the first fish that we saw anyone noodle. And we thought there'd be a lot more just like it, and it turned out to be a really great shot and one of the only shots on video that made it to the film. And it's the opening.
I think it works out well. He's really struggling, and I like all the sound effects that he's got going on there. Or gnat sound, rather.
My favorite part is when we're screening this in front of an audience and he pulls out the fish and there's that whole gasp
Yeah.
in the crowd. Laughter. Shock and all.
That fish cut him up pretty good. He took it over to the bank and bled. This is on Phil Henderson's land, the gentleman that good friend of mine. He's got wild Mustangs out there, and the Washita River runs right through it, and that farm pond right there, I caught a 3-pound bass out of it with James Payne one time.
Growing up in Oklahoma,
Seriously.
He keeps an eagle in that barn there too, doesn't he?
He does. We've shot a lot of Flaming Lips, at least 2 Flaming Lips music videos in that barn right there. Fight Test and Do You Realize? There's and they did the soundtrack, of course. My father, Paul Beesley, and my uncle Stanley fishing with cane poles. And then the first shot of Red here, out in front of his trailer on Lake Latonka. That's also the headwaters to Lake Latonka.
When I was 14, I attended a family reunion in southern Oklahoma. This is where
And there's a distant cousin of mine who, unfortunately, my cousins decided not to be in the film, but they were nice enough. Sue Robbins gave us these photographs of my cousins, which was initially how I found out about noodling. It was the first time you ever heard about noodling, Damon?
I remember
My Uncle Calvin, sorry.
just around the lake when I was a child and hearing the folklore. I never ever saw anyone do it or met anyone that really did it in real life.
Take their weapons. Let's go.
Did you ever imagine yourself doing it?
No.
Years ago.
Oh, really?
Some Oklahomans have heard of
This guy was crappie fishing at
but only a handful of brave
Lee's
still
Lake,
practice this style.
Lake Carl Blackwell, in
And finding
Stillwater.
them was a true challenge.
A little
I
too
like that
slow
show.
for that noodle.
Yeah, I like
now.
this guy.
Do you noodle?
Noodlers
Pretty
go back
slow
to the same
paced crappie
catfish
fishing.
nesting
I don't
holes
think he
each
caught
year
one.
and don't like sharing their locations.
Oh, noodling's kind of a secretive deal.
Uncle Red?
Uncle Red in front of his trailer again, and that is
You can talk all day long.
one
Noodling.
problem with
And they'll say, well,
initial
I
production of the film was these guys just wouldn't trust us because they did think we were going to be out to steal their spots,
You know,
which
you don't want him.
eventually we have
He's
done
not going to take you to his
because
spot.
we love the sport now, or at least I do. Do you love the sport?
I love the sport.
At least nobody
We're going on Friday.
We are. We're going on Friday to that opening shot there on the Washita River, that same area. Phil doesn't know it yet, but we're coming
In
out there.
Oklahoma, as
That was
far as
Bert
Title
Hart, who
29
of
state
course wrote the
statute
book on
goes,
noodling.
Noodling is defined
And here's Shane,
fishing
who
by
was
method of hands-on.
game warden, and
When I
took
say
us out
hands only,
noodling.
I mean
did
without
you
the
go
use
on
of
that
a
shoot?
hook,
I think it was James. that
Yeah,
went on
I
that
wasn't
shoot.
on this
type
one.
of grappling hook,
He took us, and of course later we went back
spear
and
gun.
took
Anything
Jerry
other than
because
your hands only
Jerry hadn't
is
been
considered illegal in
catching the bigger fish, and we thought we'd take him there, and he did. This is, of course, Matt Goad's fine work and his production partners. It's good. Some people really love this segment, which I'm one of those people, and I've had a couple of people tell me that they thought it was in bad taste or something, that it made the noodlers look bad, but it was never my intention. I just thought the film needed a little comedy break right here. And it's also somewhat educational.
I think that was the initial idea, wasn't it, to be sort of like an old instructional.
Right. That was the initial idea. And this is a question we always get: why is it only legal? I think a lot of the states just wouldn't even consider it because it's so cold, or they don't even have flathead catfish, so it wouldn't be an issue. And some of the other states like Texas and Arkansas feel like that the noodling, since you're harvesting the fish when they're on their eggs, only happens during 6 weeks, and they feel like it hurts the catfish population. But through research with Dana and some of the guys at OSU, I don't think it does actually hurt the catfish population. This was in Marlow, Oklahoma, on the 4th of July, when we were actually looking for more noodlers, and we went to this little festival in Marlow, and this guy was, of course, about to get splashed in the duck tank. I like this shot a lot. It's good timing.
You would think that you were waiting there for a long time.
No, why not? Because I can afford to fish in
You
Oklahoma.
weren't.
Going in.
Uncle Red and David. Now these were actually, like I say in the voiceover right here, they were the first guys to take us out. Just shooting
Red,
video initially, of
and his
course.
nephew David.
The question we get a lot at screenings is, what's the rope for?
Oh, right.
And actually what they do is Dave's going to go underwater and he's going to pull out the fish and then give Red the signal that he's got it, and then Red will go down and string it up so that he's less likely to get loose.
Noodling
Right.
the clear rock bottom lake.
So Dave's underneath the water, holding the fish with both
David hopes to
hands.
someday teach his son.
He nudges Red on the leg, and then Red either hands the stringer down to him or goes down and strings the fish.
Right.
For spending time with him at the lake.
There's Bubba.
I really don't
Carlton.
want to get into sports because I hear
He's
too
probably
many
like 4
stories
by
of
now.
games
Haven't
tonight,
seen it in
games
a while.
tomorrow night,
I haven't either.
finals tonight, and whatever, and that involves a lot of time away from the lake. I'm not sure. how
This
you
was
do
at the
a lot.
boathouse. A lot of beautiful shots out there.
We spent a lot of time out there.
We did. Nice time.
Oh no,
Not only noodling, but going to fish fries and rod and reel fishing and hanging out on my old boat, the 1960 Alumacraft with the 40-horse Evinrude. That was one production cost that we incurred, was buying a boat. That thing was a money
Something
pit.
comes natural to you, just
I remember
like,
that when we were getting across the water pretty good
say
and
you
you
can play the
hit
piano,
something and broke like the
without
Shear pin.
shear pin on the motor.
being
Yeah.
really
Had to be
taught.
towed in.
Yeah, it's just
Several
something that kinda
times.
comes natural.
This was actually a staged shot. He'd already caught the fish and it was under there. There's a couple of those, but
Don't give them. See.
well, for the most part, they weren't staged at all.
This is
But
the
that
kind of
one
fish I'm looking for.
was.
I
Of
don't
course,
like
it was a
looking for
blue
small
cat,
fish.
which he threw back.
The bigger the better.
Dave would actually
I wanna get
catch
one.
probably 90% of the
I've been
fish.
looking for one, I should say.
shot's new,
For the
huh?
last
No.
3 or 4 years,
Really?
go 70
Really?
pounds or better.
I think Ari shot that stuff, actually. Maybe he didn't. There's Andy Ryder, Jerry's son, and this is just a little musical interlude just showing all the guys going down.
You know, not a lot of people want to go underwater, stick
of
their
course,
hands in
Shane.
a hole where they can't see anything, and get bit
The
by
same
something.
soundbite that we
You know,
used in
and
the
that's
opening
basically what it
trailer.
is.
It's repeated here. These boys were from Hinton, and Galen Culver went out with them on the day of the very first tournament.
It's bear skin,
And I
Bear
don't
skin.
know whose hand that is. Will
It's
Boggs shot this
fingernails to teeth.
shot.
Easy way to catch fish.
Tracy Beckelheimer and
Beats the heck out of sitting on
Wild
the boat.
Horse Creek near Henny Pen, Oklahoma. Another Will Boggs shot.
The concept of
I think they caught
hand
me that
catching
day,
a
didn't
fish
No, they didn't.
is just not
And this
something
is Phil
that can be
Henderson,
outlawed.
who's going
I
to
mean,
show
we've
up
got
later
we've
on
got
during the tournament
a
segment. This was out at his
gigantic that's
land, which is
geared
beautiful, at
to
the
hook.
Washita River again in Pauls Valley, Oklahoma.
What's your favorite part of doing it?
And this guy was the gaffer. Tell him about this guy.
Yeah, this guy's got some funny business going on down underneath the water. We couldn't get him to come up for an interview, and he never brought his hands up out of the water, and Red and Dave seemed to think that he was using a big hook to stick in the holes.
Which is highly illegal, and none of the guys that we followed ever used any hooks or gaffing or anything like that. I thought at first maybe it was just because he was so large that he didn't want us to see his belly or something. Here's Uncle Red wrestling around with a fish, one of the few underwater shots that made it into the movie simply because the water was so murky. And that day they took us back in the creek where it was some clear water.
We tried a lot to get underwater shots.
Well, there's hours of that underwater footage. It just didn't look good enough to make it into the movie.
We had this idea of having the fish come out of the hole and attack the camera. We got close a couple times, but the water was just too murky.
Yeah, they would just stir up the water. These were photographs from the Oklahoma Western History Collection Museum that we purchased for the film, and I thought they worked out pretty well.
Well, the first account that I can recall I was able to find of noodling was from 1775. And it was by this trader historian called James Adair.
No, it's not. I don't think.
And he wrote a lot about the history of the South. And one of the things
it was really difficult to find
would fish by
photographs of old noodlers or even these Native American photographs.
Diving into the water and going underneath
the
cave where the catfish would shield themselves from the scorching beams of the sun. And then they would wrestle with the fish and bring it up to the water.
Maybe it's just dirty.
Maybe.
The ones I know now that are still alive is Red and his nephew.
This guy lives out at the same trailer park, Robinson Landing on Lake Latonka.
Her family.
And has lived out there for years next door to Red, so
and some of his friends
he's quite familiar with him. I think this was one of the smallest catfish ever noodled in the movie.
Don't need to give up something.
But he pulled it out anyway.
An age-old sport like
that's
like
Tim Sookie when he was a kid. Later on, he shows up and wins the
dad taught him
catfish noodling tournament. But I really liked this photograph. I thought it was sweet.
Might as well teach my kid too.
I think it's just a lost art. One of the things.
And this is one of my favorite parts of the segments of the film. We call it the history section because it gives some history, but also sort of why people started noodling and why it's phased out. And I think this guy really sums it up well when he says there's just too many things going on. And I actually don't know what, the more I think about Okie Noodling and its omnipresent theme in my life, I don't know what I would have done had I not done that film in such a perfect match of film and just things that you like to do, walking up and down rivers. I would have done that anyway. I'm just really thankful that we, everyone in the film was happy enough to have us along. I don't know. What do you think we would have done had we not done this film?
Well, like you said, it was, I mean, it was like being a kid again, you know, getting out and getting muddy and walking down the rivers and grabbing animals.
Yeah, that was a match made in heaven for me. And here's Uncle Red on the job site. He's a trash man and works for the city of Lawton. And, 11 years, like he says there. And I think he went on disability for a while and it affected his noodling during this period.
Yeah, what was wrong with him? He had a shoulder injury?
Mm-hmm.
I think he had just gone back to work here after disability.
Right. I really like this segment. This is a segment that Andrew Mayer cut for us. And he did well, especially with the music. Rex Hobart and the Misery Boys. I really like this song. I think it works out well.
Mainly, it's the feeling of
and Bloodshot Records band. So there were several other bands and just individuals that came up with music. The Lips probably had 6 or 7 songs, the majority of the songs, but there were other key players that we'll mention as they come up.
Might be the connection with having to do with why I like custodial work. I'm not stuck in a classroom with clean fingernails.
Jerry Catfish
I get my
Ryder.
hands dirty every day. You know, in fact, I think
Nice
most
light coming in out of that
noodlers
window.
find a trade where they use their hands a lot.
This is one of the few segments that I knew going into the film that I really wanted to kind of highlight and almost exploit the fact that these guys are out there and do have jobs where they're working with their hands, and we really didn't meet any noodlers that were
aren't really afraid of grabbing fish.
White collar,
If you didn't use
professional
your hands,
types.
or your hands were used in a different profession or something, then you'd probably be afraid to reach into a hole and get a fish, let them get tore up.
Dave loves to work on old cars.
Lee McFarland, plumber by national trade. Been doing
This was a miserable day.
Yeah, it was about 115, and Lee insisted that his wife Diane bring out some catfish fillets for us to eat, and I think we had just eaten.
I think the main reason the guys
But she was so kind enough to bring out the catfish fillets that we felt compelled to choke down 5 or 6 fillets in the 110-degree heat.
Noodling because they're on the golf course.
Yeah, Lee's definitely correct there. I don't remember ever meeting one of the noodlers that had a profound love for the sport of golf.
No, they're typically your blue-collar workers, you might say.
Definitely so. This always gets a nice little chuckle when he's talking about the turds floating up.
I was noodling one way or another. You're noodling.
One way or the other, you're noodling.
Anybody can catch fish in a barrel.
And this is out at
and pull them out.
Jerry's
They're
lake
big
house
fish,
at
and
Lake
they hurt,
Eufaula.
And you have to have some sort of.
It was raining that day, so we did a lot of interview stuff. And
to go in and
Jerry had,
take it.
prior to our arrival,
when
captured
you're
a
in a
couple
river,
of copperhead poisonous snakes that he had caged out there. And later on in the movie, he gets bit by one of those and has to go to the hospital.
When you catch a fish in a river, you almost.
I remember right, he has a freezer full of snakes,
Human instincts
too.
are gone.
Oh, yeah.
You're not a human anymore.
You're not a human anymore, you're an animal, and I think that holds true
and you have to,
for
you'll get hurt.
Mr. Damon Cook, because he becomes somewhat of a muskrat, like a river otter when you get in there. Can you talk a little bit about that? What takes over in you when you noodle?
Well, Jerry and I are a lot alike in that sense when we really get in our element and let it take over.
You become a tiger, don't you? This was a scary looking hole right there. I think that was one of the scariest looking messes that Jerry ever went in.
Look at that water, too.
It's murky.
Never knowing what you're going to get a hold of until you get a hold of it.
Stuff
Once you
floating on
catch
top.
that fish or whatever it might be, there's a.
I don't know how we didn't
not
catch
the drilling, but
any
the
sort
thrill
of
the hunt was
weird
there. It's just
Fungal disease or something. This is a murky shot right here, man.
they hunt for a living.
But it really didn't bother me. I thought this stuff was all fun. I mean, even though we had to walk many miles in the hot sun and so forth, I really, really enjoyed the process of making this movie.
Me too.
A lot of my friends that go with me are excellent.
Underneath footage here, we've got some music by Michael Ray Little, a friend of my father's, aka Spider.
They trust me or what?
Do you think the fish actually do trust him, or what? What do you think he means by that?
I don't know what he means by that, Brad.
He does
What do you
catch
think he means?
anything and everything.
I think he's just means that he's
doesn't
familiar
have-
enough
yeah,
with the
he does
waters,
gloves
um,
or rope,
and he's
under the
done it so many
water
times
or
that it's just
anything
very
else.
familiar to
And he
him.
will stick to a spot
that's what
until
he
he
means.
does catch the fish.
But you wouldn't say that the fish trust him.
Not necessarily trust, but they've probably seen him in their waters enough where they know him. They're familiar with him. I love this shot. He's really working for this fish. And it wasn't the biggest fish that Jerry ever caught, or any of these guys ever caught, but there's something about this shot and the way he crawls back up into this bank. I think it makes for some nice movie making.
And commercials.
Oh yeah, the Rapala commercial. They bought that particular shot to
I think our noodle felt
make a commercial. I think the tagline was, if you're not using Rapala lures, you might as well be using nothing at all. Something like
The
that.
scariest part is,
It's
you
nice.
know, I'm
Jerry's not that old. I think he's
it
about
hurts
44.
more.
His son Andy's
Used to
like
be, I get
14.
in, I catch fish, never bother me.
It's a rush to catch fish.
Andy says it's a rush, but when we went out with him,
you know, fill fish back.
Do you ever remember Andy catching a fish? I'm sure he did.
It's a rush to your whole body.
I remember him catching snakes.
So
yes, Andy loved to catch the snakes, that's for sure. And I have a big fear of snakes, which actually this movie helped me get over that fear.
Right there below the hospital, and we were out there riding real fishing.
And this gentleman actually lost a friend to the sport of noodling. He drowned out there in Lake Eufaula.
We found him about
and in the screenings, I don't think people fully understand what actually happened.
No, I don't think that they realized that his head was underwater when he got stuck, and they chuckle like it's like he got his arm stuck and was there for a couple hours, and then they came and got him out. The guy died.
He did die. I actually called the city of Pauls Valley newspaper, or not Pauls Valley, Eufaula newspaper to try to receive some information or photographs about that death, and they didn't have anything for me.
I do exactly what he did.
That's definitely something that I don't think I would do. I'd rather reach back up in a bank than do that, because this just seems scary. Maybe it's because the guy died from it.
Well, you can see it. How it's cracked. I mean, it's obviously falling down.
And when you reach your arm down in the gap of that middle of it,
years.
and if there's any
doesn't seem like a good idea to stir it up a little bit.
This can come down on you and pinch your arm and hold you down into the water.
Jerry would stick his feet back up in there and everything. That always scares me for some reason. I'd rather stick my arm in there than my foot.
I've learned to know his.
And this is Missy Ryder, of course.
His actions
Jerry's wife, and she was out on. She's a very dedicated wife of the noodler. She's out on almost every one of the noodling trips that Jerry goes on.
Because I thought he was.
And Jerry's one of the few guys that will go out by himself. A lot of guys, it's sort of a unspoken rule of noodling that these guys always want to go out in teams in case something happens.
I was still looking for the fish. I hadn't caught the fish, so I was still looking for the fish. So I dug the bank out.
This is again at the Washita River around sunset. I really like this shot.
And no matter what
Jerry walking through the river here.
Went in and caught the fish.
Noodling's not.
And this is new footage here that we added for this version of the DVD. We had to cut out the David Letterman footage, and I added this stuff of Jerry playing with this snake, which bit him several times, and he claimed that it didn't hurt. But I certainly wouldn't let it bite me like that.
Several other shows.
What I never understood is, even though the snake itself wasn't poisonous, it seems like it couldn't be healthy to have it gnawing on you like that. It seems like they could carry some kind of bacteria.
Right, getting bit by
salmonella or something.
You just can't keep them out of it, like handling snakes and stuff.
And this, of course, is Danny King, who sells catfish bait, and that is a chew in his mouth. He always has a chew. Here he will appear later in the film as one of the sponsors for the noodling tournament. And these are Channel 4 news reporters, and Jerry was on the news several times, which he's talking about here. And these are different articles, recent articles actually, of him being in Playboy magazine and Bodie magazine and different magazines that he's been in.
Every night on the news, I came in and I saw myself on the news. I mean, it was like a fantasy come true. Because of all the news and the stuff.
And Jerry would, out of all the guys, he probably did take less precaution when it came to noodling, and he would do more and seemed more dedicated to catch the fish than any of the other guys. He certainly wouldn't stick to the lakes. He was willing to go ice noodling or whatever it takes.
It seemed like he went out to find a new hole every time he went out and just sort of explored, whereas the other guys had routine holes that they would check.
That's a good point. This is one of your favorite shots right here, the winter noodling.
Yeah.
I have a stock tank behind my house.
He almost got knocked out right there.
Goes down,
and this was home video, obviously, that
or until I'm numb.
Jerry shot and actually sold this video back in the late 90s, or late 80s, early 90s. There's a big fish there. And then, of course, here's Lee McFarland talking about
there's too much.
Jerry's methods that he doesn't approve of, and this was a little bit tense. Again, at the first screening we had at South by Southwest down in Austin, Damon, I think you were sitting in close proximity to those two. What was the tension like?
It was a little bit tense. I was sitting in between Lee and Jerry and his wife, and while Lee is referring to him as a crazy man and too much stupidity there and that sort of thing, and maybe it was just me, but it felt like there was some tension.
Yeah. Well, after the screening, they all seemed to get along good. I might note at that screening, it was the first time I'd seen Uncle Red with a shirt on. He actually showed up down there with a shirt, which I thought was nice.
Mm-hmm. Looking good.
And this is Lee's dad. I think he's like 68, and again, he's a plumber and noodler, first generation, and then Lee was the second, and Lee's son, Justin, would be the third.
What are we in for today, Lee?
And this was a great day because I'm asking Lee here what he thinks we might catch today, and he's trying to play it off like, I don't know, and that day we ended up catching about 21 fish. I think James got bit that day. Lee made James go in without a glove on, which I don't think I ever did, but James went for it. I think he got bit without a glove. And here, Lee's coaching his cousin Mark from Enid and his buddy Bobby from down in southeastern
You
Oklahoma.
against Mother Nature one-on-one. When you can catch that fish and bring it out, you've done something.
One interesting point, I think, is that the limit on flatheads is 3 per person a day, and I think maybe that's a little bit why all those people there.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason, but I think just like any of the noodlers we went out with, I mean, part of the intrigue of noodling and getting bit is actually getting a new person bit, like one of your friends. I mean, to me it's just hilarious. Like the first time I took you out there and the first time I took James out there, I was just giddy. Something about the first time you get bit, you just crack up. Did you laugh when you?
McFarland's make
But I don't know
it's
why.
funny.
It's hilarious.
At age 10, Lee McFarland was taught to noodle by his father, Art.
And people
Lee now teaches his
all the
son
time
Justin,
ask why,
and anyone else daring
and I'm not certain why it's funny or
On this
why
day, the
I get
McFarlands
so
caught over
giddy,
20
but
fish.
it's exhilarating. I actually love it.
Oh, good. Push that boat back. Push that boat back.
I remember lighting some sort of fire, like kind of makes you mad, like when you get bit and it hurts and you want to go back and get it and, you know,
I got it through both sides, right here. Grab it right here.
win the battle. Man versus beast.
I got part of it. Wait. Hold on.
This is one of the most spontaneous shots that we got,
Somebody grab right here where I got the
and I think the biggest fish that we captured on film. There's some other big ones on videos, but this one looks incredibly green. And they plop him into the boat here, and then the camera rolls out. So we're out of film at this point, and I can't reload fast enough. But after this, they caught one just 30 seconds afterwards that was even bigger than that.
I think it's stupid to get in there and get bit.
Evidently, there were 2 fish in the hole together, and I guess what happens is early in the spawning season, the female lays the eggs in the nest, and then she usually leaves, and the male takes over and protects the eggs. But it's kind of a rare occasion where you catch them both still in the nest, and I guess that's what happened that time.
When I seen Lee dive off the boat, and then Justin dove just like him right off the boat, it really scared me.
This is Lee's wife, Diane, who, when they first got married, she talks about it here in a sec, and they've been married since, I think she was 16, and Lee was 18, so they've been married quite a while, almost 20 years, because I think Lee's about 36 by now.
I was about 7 or 8. I just wanted to try it.
Pretty
I told Dad I wanted to go
outdoorsy
out
people,
noodling
and just
with him
by
one day, and he said, all right, hop
the
in
look
the
of their
boat.
house,
Time to
how many
swim
deer
it.
do you think are up in
I get in there and he puts me
Oh,
in the
Lee's,
boat, and
he
I come
shot,
out screaming
I
and
don't know,
hollering,
7
and
or
I'm
8
bloody from
different
head to toe, but
bucks, and then
after
they
that,
have
it
those 2
catches your attention, you just gotta go back for
bobcats
more.
that live with them.
2 live, full-grown bobcats living in the house. Sight to see.
I'm with you.
Here's Mark grabbing the fish here. I think one of the only cuss words in the movie right there, one of their buddies says, "Oh shit."
Very, very proud that
How did that make it through
Lee would give him the
PBS
opportunity
without
to,
getting a red flag?
I don't know. I think it's just low enough where they didn't mind.
and experience some of the experiences Lee has by noodling.
Lee's mother, who lives right across the street in the house that I believe Lee and his father built that house and the house that Lee lives in right now. They built the house themselves. Lee's a very
That was the end of it.
crafty
Touched my foot,
crafty
I was
guy.
gone.
More music by the Flaming Lips. I really like this song.
Have you ever done it yourself?
And this surprised me. I thought that out of all the girlfriends and wives that we interviewed and met and talked to, that Diane would be the one that would actually enjoy it, but she doesn't. She was the Okie Noodling queen last year as well.
I might.
Little tidbit there.
Just gotta give him some time.
Lee's daughter's got a cute smile.
Evidently, she's caught the acting bug. Lee was telling me that she's been cast in a few small parts.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I wonder if Okie Noodling spawned that career.
40.
I think he said that she had a fairly prominent role in a horror film, low-budget horror film.
Wow.
I enjoy it too.
This is, of course, as it says there, Dana Winkleman, the fisheries biologist at the Oklahoma State University, and he helps run the noodling tournament now and comes down and weighs all the fish for us, and did a study of the effects of noodling on flathead catfish populations in Lake Carl Blackwell. And he doesn't catch a fish this day that we went out, but later on he told me he caught a 30-pounder. But do you believe that?
That's hard to believe, but
I tend to
does a lot of deer
believe what
hunting,
Dana
too.
says.
Yeah, he's a pretty solid guy.
Yeah.
The fish is
Remember the day that we
he
went
knows
shocking
the deer's way of
fish
thinking,
for the sake
and
of
in order to be successful
their
at
research
something like
project? They were
that,
shocking
you
fish
have to
and
know
weighing
those
them, and
things.
part of
He
his
can catch
study,
fish when
and
nobody else
it was
is
a pretty
catching
wild
fish.
ride.
It was wild because the steering went out in the boat that we were in, and the boat was doing circles, so
What he was,
it's pretty humorous.
It's exciting.
Up here. He got once they get over your stick, you got to remember.
Lee was a
to pull it out
great
and come back
teacher.
down. Reach
That's
down
one
here.
thing. He loved to teach
Give me a
people
stringer.
the sport and every little
See, here's where I grab
tidbit that he could give
See
you.
there ain't no teeth right
He
there.
would.
You get them like that, they can't hurt you. There ain't no teeth.
What's your favorite?
And a lot of people ask why there wasn't more
Getting bit, probably.
footage of the cleaning of the fish, but some people, there is in the raw footage, some people tend to get grossed out by even this scene. But Lee and his family and friends would, every time they went out, they would clean and harvest all the meat and put it in the freezer and donate the fish to different organizations, which I thought was nice.
Teaches him a lot.
And this is the creek, that Medicine Creek, that leads into Lake Latonka down in the Wichita Mountains, where, of course, Lee and Red and David and Tina noodle. Actually, Tina's never noodled. She hates the water. And this is a little sore that Red got by getting gnawed on by one of the fish.
Got me twice.
That's in Cache Creek, where I actually went back last year and yacked like a 25-pounder.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Got pictures and everything, buddy.
I hate this. God.
Yeah, and although Tina spends a lot of time at the lake, I don't know that I've ever seen her get in and swim around.
I don't think she swims.
I think she's scared of the big fish.
I hate noodling.
She has a good time on the boat, though.
She does.
All the time.
And at the time, this was
I don't know, like
Dave Baggett's
he was
girlfriend,
telling
and
me
they've
the
since
story about
been married.
where a fish was jammed into a hole.
And this is the boathouse
and he had to
where
rip
we
his
spent
hand out.
many hours, not only noodling, but doing some rod and rail fishing and just hanging out with those guys. They were great hosts, Brett and David out there.
To him, he might say it's stupid for me to worry, but because he's been doing it for so long, but I do.
And here's our second underwater shot of the film, or maybe it's the first one. Dave catching this fish. And this was one of the many times where they had to employ us, the filmmakers, to help catch the fish. And this is our co-filmmaker, James Payne, here having a hard time getting this fish strung up. I was complaining because he was in my shot. And he gives me a little look right here.
Dave had this fish with both hands and couldn't let go.
But he was a good sport about it.
Blocking the other end of the hole and couldn't move. They needed our help to catch the fish.
Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest aspects of this film and the filmmaking process with Okie Noodling was we weren't outsiders at all. Everything they did, we were included. And that went for the catching the fish and occasionally refreshing adult beverage after a hard day's work.
I think that took a little time to reach that point, though, where they were comfortable enough to show us the holes and realize that we weren't actually undercover noodlers looking for new spots.
Aren't we undercover noodlers?
We've since turned into undercover noodlers, but at the beginning of the project, that wasn't the motive.
Right.
I guess about 40 pounds.
And on tournament day, Dave caught a couple of fish that big. You went out with him on tournament day, but we're not there yet. We'll get there. And they had names for each spot, and this spot was called the picnic table because there was a picnic table up there.
There's one called the church hole and another called the schoolhouse slough.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hell yeah.
And this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. This guy, of course, is talking about blowing up the fish with dynamite and floating them to the top. And I'd heard many different shocking techniques for catching fish and, of course, noodling. But dynamite just that pretty much floored me.
It's unusual.
Well, the place is still in existence, so I won't say.
He didn't want to tell me where the place where he got dynamite was at.
Not to mention just where you could go to a lake and light dynamite and not get any sort of...
Yeah. I'm not sure that I believe that story. But he was a nice guy nonetheless.
Had to be a fairly remote spot.
The first time I saw Bassmasters,
Jerry and Missy are now helping run the tournament, but at the time when I first told him about the tournament, he was very excited because he had been thinking about trying to put one on himself. And Dave and Red are always out at the lake, and they see all kinds of bass fishing tournaments. So they thought about having one themselves. And actually, Dave and Red had little tournaments with other people, but like for a six-pack of beer or something.
Just within Lake
because so many people's afraid
in
there's
Ellsworth.
going to be so much dishonesty
Cash
to
Creek.
it. It's like stun guns, gaff hooks, aqua
And here's our buddy
air tanks. Instead of just doing it
Mr.
naturally
Stinkbait
by
salesman
hand,
himself,
and that's
Danny
the way
King.
the old timers used to
Which
do it,
is
and that's the way
stinkbait, by the
most of
way,
it's
is
done
incredible.
today.
I've used it many times. Anybody out there in the market for a good stinkbait?
It's a fine stinkbait. Is that what he's got in his mouth?
No, that's actually a tuna. You know that. And Danny is kind enough to come down each year and donate a bunch of the stink bait to donate as prizes for the noodlers, and spends his day being the MC and does a fine job, by the way.
Tournament trout fishermen, your walleye.
I did witness Jerry rubbing stink bait on his body one time.
Yes, one day we went out, and it was actually Danny King's catfish punch bait that he was rubbing on himself, which reeks.
And super tackle shows. But the noodlers
Cover
gave us no
his
attention.
human scent.
When we learned there'd never been a tournament for hand fishermen,
reasoning behind
we decided to host the first annual Okie Noodling tournament.
This is one of Damon's film shots right here. Damo with the film camera.
Good timing. Yelling at me.
So of course we made up these flyers to go around and pass out, and it was very easy to convince Lee and Jerry and Dave and Red to be in the tournament. Although I don't think any of them thought it was going to be as big of an event. I don't think anybody thought it was going to be that big.
I know we didn't. I mean, we just had no idea how many noodlers were out there.
We were hoping for about 15.
Pretty good. How are you?
Pretty good.
How many signed up the first year?
The first year there were 43 contestants that signed
that we're
up.
doing in Pauls Valley.
How many did we have last year?
No, it's fine.
Last year, which was the third year, there were 77.
Yeah, there's quite a few
growing.
coming here.
It is growing.
They buy bait from me when the river's too high to noodle.
It's
My
a
dad
legacy
had a
you'll leave
friend
behind.
several years ago was noodling the Washita
3
River,
years.
and
Time
I
will
don't noodle
tell.
myself because he got a hold of a beaver.
And this is one of the
Tore his arm up.
omnipresent
Didn't just bite him once.
stories
I mean,
of
it gnawed his whole arm.
anybody you talk to in Oklahoma about noodling. They always know a friend of a friend that got their arm chewed off by a beaver. And we never did witness that.
No.
The tournament.
I think Jerry
I'm kind of excited
played a
about it.
trick
I'm
on us
hoping
one time,
that
said
everybody's
that he had
got
found a
the same
beaver
amount
in
of
a
water to
hole.
have to go into as I
Remember
did.
that?
Yeah,
It
if there was
really
anybody
looked
that
good
was
there for
going
a
to
while. It looks good
wrestle
now.
around with a beaver, I
Water's
think it
deep.
would be Jerry,
That'll keep
though.
some of the amateur guys out.
Because
and,
the guy's just not
that's
afraid
what-
of anything.
I'm not saying I'm a professional, but I don't mind this deep water. I don't.
This is
go
again
crazy
out at
over
the
it, but, I think it's gonna make
boathouse
for a
at
good noodling year.
Lake Latonka.
And I think that there's going to be some guys out there.
And Jerry was overly concerned, I think, just because he's familiar with a lot of fishing tournaments. And I wasn't, and most of the other guys weren't that familiar with the fishing tournament. But I think Jerry thought going into it that there was going to be a lot of cheating in the tournament, and actually one point suggested that we get a lie detector, which it just didn't make sense for the budget that we had to give the guys a lie detector test. Plus, part of the reason for the tournament was just for guys to meet and bond and promote the sport. So if a guy was going to cheat, he was going to cheat. There's nothing you could do about it. So there was me with the camera backing up because I was still at this point frightened that I was going to get bit.
I was at my cabin.
And that's precisely what happened to Jerry the day before the tournament.
I had some.
You know what a snake smells like now, don't you?
Yeah, that was one thing that they always conveyed to us when we were walking down the creeks and rivers, that they could tell with the smell
And I had a copperhead
of a snake was, which they
tagging on
claimed
my
was a
finger.
sweet smell.
And
See, I wish we would have went to the hospital
I knew.
Yeah.
with
He
him.
knew
We didn't
better.
find out about it until
No,
too late.
that would have been a nice
He could take
segment
the
here.
bite.
Mhm.
If I could get him to a doctor to get the right antibiotic.
And I thought Missy would have freaked out more when he got bit, but she seemed pretty calm, cool, and collected about the whole thing. And this was a radio spot that Joe McIntosh from King Country was
Hope you had a
kind
great
enough
4th of
to
July. Hey, there's more fun
give us a
coming
plug
up in
and
Pauls Valley
then
this
let us
Saturday,
use this
July the
little
8th.
segment
It
for
is
the
first annual
film.
Okie Noodling
I really
Tournament
like this
Fish
shot.
Fry
That's one of
and
my
Festival
favorites.
this
Is
Saturday
it?
the 8th at Bob's Big Shop in Pauls Valley.
was out
Event
at,
sponsors are going to
Lucky
award over
Fall.
$1,500 in
wish we
prizes
would
for
have been
this
able to use more of that
Oklahoma
kind of stuff.
hand fishing event.
This is a former news station that I worked at.
Yeah, you might have heard of
Channel
noodling
4.
in the past, or maybe you've even witnessed the art
People
of
in other
hand fishing
states
for
always
yourself.
laugh when we
But Galen Culver's been
bring
over
that
Saturday
graphic
covering
up,
the first
Great
ever
State or
contest
what.
for noodlers.
And this is a
Results are made-
series that Galen Culver at Channel 4 has been doing for over 10 years. And
catfish contest
he's won a
anywhere.
few Emmys for his
And I think
production
we're
on
creating
that
some
show.
history here today.
The fish
And
need
this
to
is
be
Phil
brought
Henderson,
to
who
Bob's
owns
Pig Shop.
Bob's Pig Shop.
Pauls Valley,
And,
Oklahoma.
is also a fisheries biologist, so really to have the tournament there in Pauls Valley is just perfect because it's central location, and Phil loves setting up the tanks and handling the fish, and I couldn't imagine having the tournament anywhere else.
So the way that we handled the tournament, obviously we couldn't be with all of the
state of Oklahoma
participants or
open,
contestants.
you know,
so we
that's the
employed
dividing line.
4
Anything within
different
that
crews.
geographical
5
area.
different crews.
5 different
This
crews.
is your shot. You went out with the Baggetts, and this is Tracy Beckelheimer,
Blues and
who Will Boggs was kind enough to go out and capture this great footage. I love that pirate tattoo
All your
right
flatheads
there.
have to be at least 24 inches long.
I definitely got the best assignment on tournament day.
Then you got to have fish.
Because I think while Brad was, while you were trotting up the rivers for miles and miles in the heat, carrying hundreds of pounds of equipment, I was probably swimming and drinking beer. Red and Dave had caught their fish by about 10 o'clock in the morning, and we took the day off and enjoyed ourselves.
And this was what I was doing on tournament day. But really, it was fun. I enjoyed.
Jerry
I like the
decides to
rivers. I'd
noodle his
much rather be
familiar
on the
creeks on
river
tournament day.
than the lake, really.
I think there's going to be, there's a lot, I do know there's several.
And the
certified
spots where
that are in-
Jerry goes, to his credit, I do
I
think
have a
it's
feeling
more difficult to go out and
there's gonna be some
find the
tanks
fish,
used.
because these fish aren't necessarily setting
Well, I
on
think it's against
eggs,
the law.
which, like we've said, for
Oklahoma
6 weeks out of the year is really the only time, like from the first
If
week
that's
of
not new,
June
if you use tanks,
or
you know, anybody
the
can use a
last
tank
week
to
of
go down
May
and hold their breath and find a fish.
until probably mid to late July is really about the only time that these fish are actually nesting in which you can catch them.
That's a whole.
And they've got quite a bite.
But Jerry noodles all year around.
There'll be a catfish in there.
This was a creepy looking hole right there that he went in. And this is some more of Daniel's fine
Oh, by the way, I was
footage.
told I
Talk
could
about
do
this
this.
day a little bit.
Because it's in the state.
Well, there's a little bit of a controversy. This was before. We've since employed 2 different categories in the tournament, one for scuba and one for
By 9 a.m.
non-scuba.
on tournament day,
And this first
David
year,
and Red had
there's a
already
little bit
caught 3
of
fish over 35 pounds.
controversy
But I'll tell you
based on
what,
the fact
I'll
that a
put
few of the
it
guys
up
did use scuba gear.
in
And you kind of hear
Yeah,
conflicting
they-
statements even in the
they don't
movies,
say that
and
goes
it's
in
kind of a
the
little bit
movie.
confusing.
Pretty damn
But
good.
in reality,
you fish,
it is
I
legal
know
to
I
use
got-
scuba gear to noodle in the state of Oklahoma, but individual lakes sometimes.
Don't allow scuba, period.
Right.
Not for noodling. And this happened to be one of those lakes that actually does not allow scuba.
We're going to see if we can't get a little bigger fish, but...
But it was still wasn't breaking
Actually,
the
those two aren't
tournament
bad.
rules.
Those 2 aren't too bad, so I don't know how the other guys are doing. The water's still up around the creeks and rivers.
So while you were out with Red and Dave, I was out with Jerry.
We've got just about
And
as good a chance as
James
anyone does,
Payne,
because
our
what we've been
co-filmmaker,
hearing is
was
in some
holding
of
down the
rivers, there's
fort
not that
at
big
the
of fish,
tournament, and
but
James
where we
was
noodle out there
primarily
are.
responsible for
So I'd say
running
ours will come out
the
good, but I
tournament
think
the
he
day
can
of the
walk
tournament
away
and
with
most of the
prize,
pre-production
but
here.
I don't know.
Lee and family have caught 9 fish and should be in the running for largest stringer.
Ready?
I think there was some shaky math or paperwork the day of the tournament. I think Lee should have been in the top 3.
And if I can get in
Which I
those
think
spots,
he
if I can
finished.
find
For biggest fish?
No, for biggest stringer.
Didn't he? I thought he did win.
I guess he did get 3rd, but maybe I thought he should have got 2nd. This was a creepy looking
Because
scene
of all
right
the
here.
water
I'm
that we
crawling out
had,
of
all
that.
the rain, it's
Typically, this is
been
the
nearly
exact spot where
impossible in
Jerry would
areas
find the
that he normally
fish.
goes in. So I'm
It's
hoping
quite common for snakes to fall down
some
right next to
miracle
him,
that
and
he
he'd get
can find
inside
some
these
fish.
huge brush piles and spend hours and hours tearing them apart. Where, you know, Lee or Dave or Red, they just go out, plop out of the boat, and look under a rock, and if it wasn't there, they'd move on. This is a Don Sinclair from Tonga bringing in a couple of fish. A shot of my dad walking through the crowd right
Are
there.
these some exciting fish
David
here?
Shegog, who the first year was the guest MC along with Danny King here. And that's one of the coolest things about having the tournament is seeing all these little kids running around out there grabbing the fish. I think that's really nice.
It's kind of curious. Not everybody.
It's interactive for sure.
Jerry hosted a noodling clinic at the last noodling tournament and taught all the kids in the tank how to grab a fish.
That was a nice touch. Just had a shot of your brother in the background there.
Oh, he got me beat. He got me beat.
There's the first
I
year
got one near that big.
T-shirt designs.
I'm gonna guess him around 40, 45.
This was nice because we had David and Lee. That's first year. There's a shot of your camera right there, and Damon. Oh, there's Damon on the background.
Where'd he go?
This first year just seemed way more frantic than the past couple of years. Lee showed up at the same time Jerry did. They both had, like, you know, coolers packed full of huge fish, and it's very exciting, that's for sure.
Jerry also brought a big turtle with him.
A huge snapping turtle. Back to Tracy out there looking for fish, and this was something that was common for a lot of the noodlers to say that somebody else has been in their home. Like,
well, yeah, there's still guys out there looking.
As many times as we've been, it's hard to believe that there's that many guys out there looking in one another's holes.
Yeah. Probably about 20 people.
But maybe
have
so.
brought in
Who
fish
knows?
so far, and then
There's Shane
roughly
again.
20 to 25 are still looking.
Still on the day of the tournament here.
Was that Shane the park ranger?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah. It was the day that we
Day of
went
the
out with him
tournament,
to
and
that
I still have not caught any fish for the tournament.
Thin Creek in
But
Maysville.
I'm not discouraged. I feel like I will.
People always like this shot in the screening. I wish I would have held it longer.
I hope so.
There's a little alligator gar there
Or did, but
that
it's
Jerry,
it's
I
one
think
of
he
those
catches
things
it,
where,
but I didn't get it
you
on
know, there's-
on camera.
If you caught fish every day you went out, then there wouldn't be any fish left.
This was again on tournament day, and
Yes, Jerry got bit by a copperhead.
I think he spent 2 hours looking
last
for that. I
week,
felt
and
sorry for him.
really
he was
surprised
getting
me
pretty
that he come
frustrated.
in and decided to go
But
ahead
on
and
tournament day,
noodle,
he
but
did catch a couple
Jerry
of
is
snakes
a
and
barn-bred
a huge
noodler.
turtle.
He does it for
I don't think anybody else got any snakes
so
on
he's not
tournament
going to
day.
give up real
No
easy.
prize for
gonna
snakes,
give 'em a
Brad.
run for the money.
Maybe next year there should be. There's some more music by Rex Hobart and the Misery Boys, and the Pistol Arrows in the background of that last shot, who were the band the first year. Now the Hosty duo is taking over that role. A couple of cuties there. Our Okie Noodling queen the first year was, of course, Tina, Dave's girl. I thought that was very fitting. And this is Tim Sookie, as you see, who ends up winning the tournament. And there's a shot of him earlier as a little kid holding up that tiny little catfish. And I think he's been noodling since he was about 10. As most of these guys seem to start about that age.
And he was a little hesitant to let us go with them.
Yeah, I don't remember. He didn't ever let us go with him. Tim was one of the noodlers that was pretty adamant about, you can come do interviews and I'll talk to you. But he didn't want us to find his spots. I think from what the other guys have said about Tim, he's very highly secretive about his spots, and that's more common than not, because these guys want to keep these spots sacred for years and not have other people invading them. And when you're addicted to the sport, I guess I can understand that, actually, because it is somewhat addictive, I think,
But you can
even
end
though
up
that
with a
sounds
mighty
weird,
big fish
but
on the end of your hand.
you crave
the
it.
end of your arm.
Right?
And on a
Yes.
contest day like
Yes.
this, you know, the best man doesn't always win.
And this is
But
true
the
what he's
luckiest
saying
guy
about
on
the
the
best
day of the
man doesn't always
contest,
win
who was best
on the
with
contest
fish
day,
that he had an
because
opportunity to
I
grapple
think
out of the
Lee
water
and
is
Jerry
going to
and
win.
Dave and Red
Dan
could have
King's
won
gonna tell us
easily
to
on
get
that
that
first
today.
day had they had some bigger fish. Another thing that we haven't really touched upon, it's very difficult to find a hole that's actually holding fish. I mean, sometimes it takes hours and hours of surveying different holes and crevices and back in the bank and under rocks, and I mean, it takes a long time to find these holes.
These guys getting these with their hands. You know,
Danny's super good with the crowd. People at the tournament love him.
Places for bigger stringers is lead.
And we really did just get lucky having the two subjects of the film place and the contest. A lot of, I think, people have thought that we staged that. Or
Right, which we didn't. And the past 2 years in the tournament, none of the guys have even come close to placing.
I weighed in at 720. Nobody weighed in after me, and I come up with 112. Miraculously, they come with 115, 112 too.
Way in controversy.
Yeah.
I don't know how they come up with that, and we was asking, but nobody could answer it.
That flag they kept on their boat pretty much on every shoot we went on with them. That flag was in the background. I like that flag a lot. And of course, Red's talking about retiring right here. But I think he still jumps in the water. He hasn't retired yet. He'll get in.
He's kind of assumed the role usually of letting David catch the fish, but I think he's still a blocker and a stringer holder.
A blocker and a stringer.
The tournament, I was glad to come along and see some guys come along and prove me wrong. I'm not the best.
I think Jerry
I'm
sums
one
it
of
up
the
well
best,
here.
But I found out there are guys as good as I am, so
That was big of
I'm
him
glad they
to
are.
admit.
It was.
That means that there's a whole breed out there mean.
Who's this guy? What's going on here? This is the church hole that Dave and Red took us to many times. And this is one of the few times that we ever went to the church hole, this particular spot where they always caught fish. And this was actually in September when I didn't think there'd be any way that there'd be a fish in there. And it ended up being, you know, the last shot of the film here, which Ryan Trammell shot this. And it's a flathead. I bet it weighs 35, 40 pounds, but it sort of gets away. How much do you think that thing weighed?
It's hard to tell when you actually didn't get it out of the water.
Whatever. I got it out of the water. And this is me.
Can you actually tell people that you caught that fish?
Shut up. This is me cracking up, of course, because the whole process is completely hilarious. All the fine bands that helped out. Can't believe you don't think I got that fish.
Well, I think there's a 10-second rule, or you've got to get him in a boat or on land, or...
I'll show you on Friday when we go. I'll catch that mother.
We'll see.
And OETA was our station partner, and then of course ITVS. So hope you guys enjoyed, and come out to the next